Our final presenter for this session, we have one more to come later on today, is Peggy Nelson from the University of Minnesota. Peggy's going to be talking about her research into how the COVID the pandemic restrictions on visitations for older adults, how that really impacted them both physically and mentally. Peggy?
Thank you. Yes. Thanks very much. I'm here from the University of Minnesota, and I'm representing a large multi-sensory research team. We study people who have vision loss and hearing loss and balance and tinnitus, and some of our team members, also ourselves, have hearing loss and vision loss. And so when the pandemic hit, we were involved in in-person research, and we couldn't see our people anymore in person. And so we quickly pivoted to the questions of how the pandemic was affecting people as they were home, alone often, and what was happening as the pandemic proceeded. So we thought we knew something about social isolation if a person has hearing loss or vision loss. We thought that we knew that vision loss, and then if an older person has both vision and hearing loss, they're related to reduced social network diversity. That is, they only see a few people every day or every week, and reduced social participation. And we thought that we knew that vision and hearing and dual sensory loss were related to the low availability of support and encouragement, and so loneliness. And we think perhaps that hearing aids and good cochlear implants can also reduce social isolation and depression in adults with hearing loss. And this has been part of our ongoing research. But during the pandemic, this is a whole new world. In Minnesota, like many places, we had a shelter-at-home order that started in April, and all of our in-person interactions were discouraged or completely shut off. So what we did as April arrived, and we knew the pandemic was going to be around for a while, who knew it was going to be around for this long, is we contacted our folks and we set up Zoom meetings with them, and we set those up regularly, like every 6 weeks. When we first saw them, we asked them to think back to March, think back to the good old days. How many people did you see every week? And how many people did you talk to every week? And how many times were you on Zoom or on phone with people every week? And now, what's your life like today in early April as the pandemic has hit? And what has changed since then? So we'll ask them about their interactions with people and also about their worry and sense of loneliness. So we're involved with people who were 55 years and older. We had nearly 60 people who were engaged in the study. They all had typical cognitive function. But we had 3 groups of people. Vision loss group, who were all legally blind, and that were about 13 people of those. We had a large hearing loss group. Half of those were hearing aids and half of them cochlear implants, about 12 each. And then we had a control group who reported no sensory loss. And we asked them then, as I said, how many interactions did you have in the good old days, and how many do you have now in person? How many interactions did you have in the good old days electronically through Zoom or phone, and how many do you have now? And then also these, what we thought were interesting questions about their worry and about their access as they were sheltered at home, about their worry about the virus, about their getting their essential needs, about keeping social distance, about not being able to touch things and get close to things, and about understanding speech with face coverings. Those were the worry questions. And then we asked them how they accessed information and services and social support and food, transportation, etc. And as you might predict in stopping to think about it, the people with vision loss might be expected that their independence was affected because they could not go out, find their bus, use their cane, navigate the world in the way that they were typically used to doing, perhaps have a companion, go to the grocery store. The people with hearing loss were more affected in their social connections. They weren't able to have person-to-person contact. They moved to Zoom more, and their communication methods changed. So we found some things that we didn't expect, and I'll show you a few of the results that will look like these odd graphs here. The people with vision loss are shown in red lines. The people with hearing loss are shown in green lines, and the healthy controls are shown in blue lines. This was a questionnaire about depression. So the session number is across the bottom. So session number 1 is when they were thinking back to the good old days, back in March. They see that the PHQ score, that screening score, is very low. That is, they were not prone to depression. And then as days went on and the months went on, from month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, and onwards, the rates of depression, or the likelihood of depression, went up. Very interesting to us that they went up in the groups who were healthy controls and who had vision loss, and they did not in the group with hearing loss, although it went up a bit. It did not go up to the same extent for the people with hearing loss. Interestingly, everyone's in-person communication just hit rock bottom. Some of the people reported that back in March they had more than 100 interactions per week, and they went down to between 0 and 5 per week, as we all did during that period of time. And those didn't increase very much over the length of time. Interestingly, their number of Zoom or electronic communications started to go way up. So initially, if they looked back to March, they didn't do Zoom with people very often, once or twice a week maybe, but not very often, and that increased a great deal over that time. As it turns out, that was highly satisfactory for the people with hearing loss. That actually worked well for the people with hearing loss. Did not work as well for the people who were blind. In this case, in this graph, we're talking about worry and how much worry it causes you because you can't get close to things and touch things. And here you can see the red line. The people with vision loss have much greater worry about not being able to get close to things than the other groups did. The worry is low for the blue line and the green line, and it stays low all the way through our test session. The worry stayed high for the people with vision loss all the way through. It didn't improve. They were worried constantly about not being able to get close to people and things that they really wanted to in order to maintain their independence. An opposite effect happened when we asked them about their worries about communication. So now the group with hearing loss has high worry immediately after the onset of the pandemic and all the way through until our most recent conversations, which were just last month. That worry about not being able to understand people is through the roof for people with hearing loss. And for the healthy controls and for the people with low vision, they were not worried about those things. They're monitoring and maintaining their ability to communicate. So our results show that this wide impact of the pandemic, and it had a wide impact on everybody, and it had a wide impact on our social and emotional well-being during all of this time, but people were affected differently. The people with low vision were more affected in their social lives and daily activities, and the people with hearing loss were affected in one way, and that was the mask wearing and the difficult speech comprehension. There are many of the aspects of the mid-pandemic communication methods they would like to keep. As we talk to them now, they say, please keep us on Zoom, keep us on live captioning, keep those things going. Let me have remote visits, let me have virtual visits with you, and because I can understand you better. But when we're out in the world and we're wearing masks, this is a really difficult challenge for us. So for them, returning to in-person mask communication seems like the worst of both worlds. So we're learning to pay attention to our individual people. The pandemic hasn't affected everyone equally, and that we can adopt some new styles of communication that will keep going and maybe that are low cost and high benefit for our colleagues.
Great topic. Wonderful. The question that springs to my mind in listening to your talk here, you talked about how some of the older patients had to transition to electronics. Was that something that they had to overcome and learn? Because obviously older adults don't necessarily Zoom or TikTok or anything like that.
Right. So often the first in April, right after we all shut down, or in May, soon after that, they were still adjusting to that, and so their rate of electronic communication was still increasing. But by summer of 2020, is that the right year? 2020? Is that what that by summer of 2020, almost everyone had adapted, and they had Zoom communications from home, or FaceTime, or some multimedia communication that they could do successfully from home. And their number of weekly interactions was quite high and very similar. So it was a little bit of an adapting process, but now that it's here, they would really like to keep that up.
The variations about low vision or low hearing, it's really striking to me. Is there a middle ground somewhere that can mitigate the impact on all the older adults, no matter what kind of malady they might be suffering from?
I think we're going to have to, for all older adults, I think we're going to have to think about what are safe ways that we actually can be close together again during we're living with the continuing effects of the pandemic. How can we safely be together? I think we've learned more about aerosols. We've learned more about the benefits of mask wearing so that we can actually touch one another, which would make a big difference in quality of life. We can actually see one another and do that safely with masks. But then when we're doing this auditory communication with masks on and with strangers, especially with a service worker, a bank teller, a restaurant worker, or something, the voices that people don't understand, we're going to have to figure out how we can do that communication, perhaps with live captioning or other ways, so that people can hearing loss can get through those moments.
Question from our webcast viewers: how does this inform strategies to help people with vision or hearing loss that aren't older?
Absolutely. Many of the colleagues that are on the project are younger and have vision and hearing loss, and they say, give me the live captioning, give me all the time, everywhere we go, minimize the use of masks when we can, and so yes, it will absolutely apply to the younger population. You bet.
Thank you so much, Peggy. It sounds like and looks like a moving target.
Yes.
And it's just something that we'll all have to adapt to.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes this session for us. We have one more at 1:00 p.m. Pacific time, and this one's a little more, upcoming session has a little more close to home material, so you might want to tune in for that. Thank you so much.